single target damage in the open field in Rise of Kingdoms is nearly extinct. There is effectively one single legendary commander in the end game in anybody's 5-army lineup that can just barely get away with using single target damage, and that is none other than Hua Qibing. So today we're going to talk about the future of single target damage in Rise of Kingdoms, because in the open field I feel like we've kind of gone down almost an irreversible path. Or is it? We're going to talk about that in today's video, but first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, which means if you guys want more Rise of Kingdoms content, definitely subscribe down below. We are so close to 90,000, and drop a thumbs up if you appreciate meta discussions just like this one. But what are we really talking about here? Okay, we're really talking about how quickly single target damage became almost unplayable in the open field in Rise of Kingdoms. It really happened over the course of the last 6 months, ever since we got our hands on King Arthur. And why is that? Well, King Arthur kind of kicked off the 10th generation of commanders here with a very powerful active skill, 2800 to 3 targets, and he also gives you a 30% bonus to combo or skill damage here. And the combination of his active skill and his expertise here, especially when secondary, made him pretty much the strongest single commander in the game. Now he has his downsides. He doesn't have a perfect combo counterpart, and that's a topic for another video, right? The point is the damage factor went through the roof with King Arthur, rivaled only by Ragnar with his expertise here, right? That's kind of the only thing that came close. And then we saw Bai Qi, right? And Bai Qi is 2400, 5 target, half circle smite damage, kind of insane, right? And then we got Emperor Qin, right? And Emperor Qin was kind of the nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned when it comes to single target damage in the open field. And why is that? Well, if you do the napkin math, his active skill, I mean, it's hard to even do the math here because he's not really dealing like a boatload of skill damage all on one turn. It's just a modest amount of damage every single turn. So if you do like an 8-second calculation, he's dealing like 12 to 14,000 damage over the course of 8 seconds or something insane like that, right? And so if we take a look at some more napkin math here, okay, we can have rough estimates of damage factor kind of ordered by just raw power, okay? And as you can see here, again, this is, I don't want you guys to take this as like absolute fact. This is just rough numbers here, but if we assume about 1700 damage for Emperor Qin per turn, he's always going to have a 15% bonus to that regardless of who his secondary is, right? We're talking Twilight Falls, Ottoman Empire, Wedge Formation. That's a guaranteed 15% skill damage there. Let's just round down. Let's say it's 13,000 or something. It's still way higher than second place, which is King Arthur, who is a cut above Ragnar, Herman Prime, Liu Che, all this stuff, right? All these commanders are crazy. But again, if we sort this list, and this is like all relevant commanders right now, pretty much, right? I might be missing a couple, like obviously Philip is relevant, but he's not really dealing a crazy amount of damage, or at least not a relevant amount compared to everybody else here. You'll notice that the only commander that is single target that is even like slightly up there is William Wallace, and that's assuming the best case scenario of you getting hit, okay? And that's the last thing you want. If you're getting hit with William Wallace, you're cooked, okay? And that's nothing against William Wallace, it's just if you're getting swarmed with anybody, like, you're cooked. It is what it is. Things pop really quickly in Rise of Kingdoms, right? So you'll notice that of the bottom 5, okay, the bottom 5 commanders here, one of them is AoE, and that's William, and that's, I mean, he's a 4th generation legendary commander who came out in August of 2020. So he's big time old, okay? And that's why he's so far down here. He's 1500 to 3 targets. It's like, it's nothing, right? Even with his instant proc, he's not dealing much damage. But anyway, my point is the bottom of the damage list is filled with single target damage commanders. So then you might be saying, okay, well, yeah, you know, they're down there, but it is what it is. They bring other things to the battlefield. And it's like, actually count the number of commanders here. Okay, let's just go ahead and count that. It's 16. Okay, so of these 16 relevant and semi-relevant commanders, we see the bottom 5 is filled with 4 single target damage commanders. So okay, well, why is that relevant, right? Well, why would that be the case? Well, okay, 16 minus 4, that's 12. So how many commanders do you typically run in the open field if you're running 5 marches? 10. It's 2 commanders per march. So okay, if you just brought the top 10 commanders, then you're not using a single target damage commander. Now It doesn't actually work out that way because you have to take into consideration troop types and things like that, and you'll notice that there's a lot of archer commanders on this list because they have a lot more 5 target AoE commanders, and so that's why they're up here in terms of damage factor. The point is, Hua is only here and is only still relevant in the grand scheme of things because he's cavalry, and cavalry just they don't have another AoE commander that's super relevant right now. Okay, and that kind of is, I mean, I don't know, to me that's kind of alarming, right? Now look, we can't just distill down commanders to their damage factor, right? Like obviously commanders do more than just provide a damage factor, but like also, I mean, if we're being honest, okay, typically when a new commander comes out and their damage factor is power crept, then they are part of the meta. Like that, just historically, just look back, and that is typically the case. There's a few exceptions, not that many of them. Okay, so what does this mean for the future of the open field meta, right? If the developers start releasing more single target damage commanders, then players will simply not invest in them. That's exactly what we've been doing with William this entire time, right? People been using William, they've been using, I mean, we used Guan Yu up until Ragnar Prime came out, right? People will simply hold on to their AoE commanders until a better AoE commander comes out. That's been the trend. That's what people do. We know that's the case. So the only way that the developers can sort of kind of bring out more single target damage commanders and expect players to use them is if they have really interesting new gimmicks, or they're just so absolutely tanky that it kind of makes up for it, right? And I think that's kind of concerning, right? Like just mildly concerning that we've kind of like, the game is so heavily down the AoE path that is it even possible for us to really turn it around at this point? Like I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but if we wanted to release a single target damage commander that could output a relevant amount of damage with every skill cycle, they would have to have a like 4,500 damage factor when you factor in other buffs, bonuses, and boosts and all that other stuff, right? Like we're actually like really far off from the mark here because AoE is just so much more powerful, right? So and then the question is like, well, would they even do that? Would they release a 4,500, like would they really make that big of a jump? I think the answer is probably not, right? I mean, if we look at like Shapur, for example, he does 3,200 to a single target, but it's like additional damage ticks over 4 seconds, right? So it's like it's not even what we're looking for here. It's not, and it's not even close, right? It's not even close to that 4,500 mark, right? And so like we're really far away from single target damage factors keeping up with the damage output of AoE commanders. And so I'm just really like curious how the devs are going to solve this, or if this isn't even a problem. Like maybe it's just the case that like we'll just always skip the single target commanders and just that's it. Like the game has matured to the point where single target is just so power crept that it's irrelevant. Like, and that's totally possible, right? I mean, we kind of saw a similar thing with Sargon, right? Sargon came out and his damage factor at the time was relevant. 2,500 to one target was relevant back then, but because he dealt the damage so slowly over 5 seconds, he couldn't keep up, right? His damage, he was dealing damage too slow. His damage per second was very, very low, right? And so in the same way as damage over time being power crept out of the meta, single target damage is kind of next, right? I mean, it's right there on the chopping block, and all that we need is one more AoE cab commander, and then that's it. You will not run a single target damage commander in a 5 army lineup, and it's only a matter of time before that creeps up to 6 and 7 armies, right? Like that's just how it's going to go. Now there is one thing that single target is still good for, and that is swarming down structures. So swarming down flags, swarming down forts, swarming player cities. These are activities where single target damage does shine, because as you know, the maximum damage output of AoE is, you know, a result of hitting multiple targets. So if Bai Chi is only hitting one target, he's only dealing 2,400, whereas Hua is hitting one target for 27. And so in this case, we have Hua as a superior commander to use in those scenarios. But then there's the Achilles heel here, where if you look at the 4th skill, it says if this commander's troop is attacking another troop on the map. So you don't get the skill damage and you don't get the defense when you're swarming a flag or a fort or anything with Hua. Same thing also with King Arthur, by the way. It says if this commander's troop is attacking a field troop, you get 50% of stats. If you're attacking a flag or fort, you do not get this, right? And so Hua with King Arthur is like one of the worst commander pairs to use to swarm down a flag or fort, by the way. You just simply have such few stats, it really hurts. And maybe that's the devs way of kind of countering it, but if they're going to do that, then you know, single target damage commanders can't have skills like this, right? It can't be exclusive to on the map. Like if we're going to make it so that way single target is so power crept when it comes to damage output on the map, dealing, you know, fighting field troops, then what we need is the single target damage to shine in those scenarios where things get swarmed down. And I think this is why the Belisarius Prime launch is a kind of a prime example of what the future of single target might look like. The only thing that he's missing when swarming a flag or fort is the bonus to skill damage here, which is, I mean, that 30% bonus to skill damage is something that I would love to see him have when swarming those things down, but he also has this super powerful like instant debuff to the target when he's swarming things down. And so using Belisarius Prime to swarm down flags is actually really good. Like that is what he is good at, that is his thing, and that's what you should be using him for sure, right? Like if you guys were wondering, well, if it was bad for it, who should we be using? Belisarius, surprisingly, right? And that's why he's kind of a toy for the whales, because the whales are the ones swarming down flags and forts, right? So I kind of think maybe that's the strategy the devs can take, where like they just hump the single target damage commanders filled with stats, march speed, things that are applicable in all scenarios, not just open field PvP, and ways for them to like really shine in those swarming scenarios, because otherwise I simply don't see a path forward for single target damage in the current meta, unless, like I said, unless we see a 4,000 or 4,500 damage factor single target nuke. That's the only thing that could like catch them up to speed, right? And so that's like that's a massive jump, and that would be a little bit ridiculous to make that all in one generation, right? And so it's like are they going to do that, or do they just let the single target rot? Like I don't really know the answer there. I suspect that next year we're going to have another, you know, I guess I should be more clear here. I think the 11th generation of commanders is going to be similar to the 9th generation of commanders, in that they will have more niche uses in the open field. They might be more single target heavy, but maybe they are really going to focus on swarming things down with those commanders, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking. Otherwise I really don't know the answer here, right? I truly don't, unless, like, if I really want to think outside the box. And let me just be very clear here, because I know people like to take my words and run with it, and I just want to, like, let's just throw this out there. This is not happening. This is not something that is coming down the pipeline. I don't have insider info. This is not a leak, right? But like one of the ways that other games solve this problem, and I'm going to use an example that's a little bit bizarre, but if you've played the Pokemon TCG, okay, they have sets that rotate in and out, right? And so you can only use the most recent X number of sets in competitive play, and this kind of helps them with power creep, right? Obviously there's still power creep, but what happens is, like, you know, if there's a broken card in one set, well then okay, it's only going to plague the game for a certain number of months before it kind of falls off and it's no longer part of the meta. And by the way, I haven't played the Pokemon TCG in a few years, so if that's just changed, let me know. But this kind of like transitory meta that moves beyond certain things kind of lets them shrug off problems that they may not have anticipated, and you know, they can remove that burden from the meta, right? And so, you know, in a similar way, I should say, Rise of Kingdoms does that in the season system, right? Like if you go into season 1 of KVK, you don't have to worry about Emperor Chin, because he ain't in season 1 of KVK, right? You don't have to worry about Ragnar Prime, he ain't there, right? And so in the same way, like, what if we had something beyond Season of Conquest, right? What if we had a new era, a new some new season that we go into that like only uses some commanders from Season of Conquest, and then the other commanders kind of get left behind? I know that sounds really bad, right? And I know that it sounds like, oh well, that would kind of immediately make a lot of our investments irrelevant, right? And that's true, I understand that, but I mean, we kind of already do that. Like, I haven't touched my Herald in years, I haven't touched my Boudica in years, I haven't touched my Sargon in years. These are commanders that I've invested in and I've left them behind. Same thing with my Nebu, same thing with my Saladin, same thing with my Tarek. Like, these are commanders that I spent sculptures on and I will literally never use them again. And you know, whether it's because they're just not part of the meta, or whether it's because the game forces us to get rid of them in a future season, does it really matter? Like, the end result is the same. We're not using them. Like, that investment is gone effectively, right? Now you can make the argument that, like, okay, well, at least I could go back and use them if I wanted to, but you're not going to, right? You won't. You're not going to do it. You're not going to take out Sargon. You're not going to start using Boudica Prime. There's, you know, and like, look, I know that if you have, like, for example, Alex, right? Alex had a big resurgence after Liu Che was added to the game, and that is a very nice sort of serendipitous outcome of just having all of your commanders available at all times. I understand that that's cool and I like that, I really do, but I'm just trying to like think outside the box of how they could possibly solve this problem, because at the current rate of power creep of AoE, especially with Emperor Qin, it just like this 10th generation just absolutely crushes every other generation before it, and that kind of includes Ragnar Prime as well. Like he's just so strong, and so I don't know, I really don't know the answer to this, and I'm hoping that the devs already have an answer to it, or again maybe this just isn't a problem. Maybe they just say, yeah, like, single targets, just we're done, like it's just not good enough and it is what it is, and we're just going to use AoE now forever, and that's it, and that's the meta, and we're just going to stay the meta. Maybe that's the solution. Like maybe I'm overthinking this, I don't really know, but I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. Do you think this is a problem at all, or am I overthinking it? Or like have you even realized this? Did you realize that Huo is the last remaining like relevant single target commander? Now if you're running, you know, 6 or 7 armies, obviously you're probably running something like a William Wallace or something like there are other commanders that are single target that you might be using, but like really it's Hua Bing. That's pretty much it. He's the last bastion of single target damage commanders left in our current 5 army meta, and so we are like at a turning point right now. Literally right now in the meta we are at a turning point, because the next cav release is not going to be single target. If it is, I mean, I guess we will replace Hua with that, and we're going to keep running Joan Prime behind it, but like that kind of just kicks the can down the road in terms of solving the problem, right? Because then calves are still going to be the one troop type that's using a single target damage commander, and that means they're still going to be behind in terms of total damage output. Now perhaps a more logical solution to this problem, as opposed to a whole new season of commanders, right? Maybe they could solve this with armaments, right? Maybe the next skill damage formation is the user's troop deals 20% more single target damage, right? Like maybe it just has a big bump for just single target, and we kind of see precedent with Hunter, right? Hunter says when dealing direct damage to a single target, the damage is increased by 10%, otherwise it's increased by 2%, right? So we already kind of see a distinction in the game dialogue that shows that they know that single target damage needs a bigger boost to be relevant in Hunter, and likewise we know that they have a distinction in commanders like Hermann Prime, for example. They specifically call out AoE skill damage, right? So there's already sort of this divide on the back end of bonuses to these different types of damage, right? And so maybe they could go that route and just put in a whole new formation for single target damage. The problem with that though is like, what if we have a really good single target skill damage cav commander come out, and then right after that we have a really good single target damage infantry commander come out? Now we got to start building that new formation for multiple troop types. It's like, buddy, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, right? Because it's like, that's kind of what we did with wedge formation before we had more, you know, to pick from, right? Like before pincer, before delta, we literally just used wedge for everything and just collected it for different troop types. Maybe that's the route that they could do. Or maybe it says this unit's troop deals 5% more single target damage, and it doesn't specify skill. That way if there's a single target smite commander or a single target combo commander, whatever, that one formation will encapsulate all of that, right? I don't know. At that point, would single target just be another like type of damage then? I'm not really sure, but I think, you know, maybe if you did a combination of the formation bonus plus whatever the special and rare inscriptions are, maybe you could use that to sort of patchwork solve this problem, where it just makes single target, or maybe what if you had a formation that said like, if your commander's troop deals single target damage, deal equivalent damage to 2 other nearby targets or something like that, and that would effectively turn Hua into a 2700 3 target AoE. Maybe you could do something like that. I have no idea. So maybe they could solve this with a formation system as well. That's definitely a possibility. How much work that would take, and if that's even possible or probable or whatever, I really have no idea. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about that. Let me know in the comment section below, and while you're down there, drop a thumbs up on the video. It really helps out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it, and consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video, because we are so close to 90,000 subscribers, guys. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.